Hi, welcome to Bedazzle Me. Today I want to show you how I make this really fun cherry blossom cluster bracelet. It's super chunky and super busy, so if you don't like all of the mixed pieces together, you could still do a piece with maybe just one type of bead that I'm going to show you how to make in this tutorial. And that would be really pretty. I like the mix. I've got pods in there, beads with a cherry blossom silk screen painted on, and then actual cherry blossom flowers, pearls, sparkly pink beads, etc. So let's get started. I'm using this cherry blossom silk screen by Joy Coleman from Joy Creations. I love this silk screen. It's so pretty. And then I'm also using acrylic paint by Apple Barrel. This color is called Bright Magenta. I rolled out a thick piece of Kato white on the thickest setting of my pasta machine and laid that down and then placed the silk screen over it. And you want to make sure to really press down. Now these silk screens have like a shiny sticky side, and that's the side that goes down. And so you can see with my fingers I sort of varnish it on, because if it's loose in any spot and it comes up off of the clay while you're putting your paint on, then your design won't take. Next I applied about 3 big glops of the paint onto the silk screen, and you can see here I'm just moving it around with my finger to make sure that all of the design elements are really well covered in. This is really important to make sure that your design comes through nice and strong. It's reveal time. Nice and slowly peel off your silk screen from your clay and you can see the pattern. This is my favorite part of working with silk screens, this magic right here. Look at that! It is so much fun. Now so I'm gonna put this piece of clay in a nice safe spot where it can dry, and I'm gonna show you what to do next. So while that's drying, I am just taking some white. You could actually probably get away with using scrap clay for this, but you know, whatever. I used white and I just tore off little pieces. If you wanted all of your beads to be the exact same size, then you could roll out a snake and measure where you make the cuts. I wanted mine to be sort of random sizes, so you can see here that when I'm rolling, some of them are really, really small and some of them are a little bigger. And then keep in mind, we're going to be putting the thick layer of silk screen cherry blossoms that we just made over the top of these, so the final product is going to be just a smidge bigger. So keep that in mind when you're figuring out how big to roll out your little balls. So I skewered each of my white beads with a toothpick and left the toothpick on there. And then I took my Sculpey liquid clay and covered each bead entirely with the liquid clay. And then I'm totally gonna butcher this name, Chin Lai Yi Nail is the name of the glitter that I'm using. I will write it out in the description below so you don't have to rely on my total butchering of that. I think it's a Chinese company name, but it comes in this pack of, I think, like 9 or 12 different colors of glitter. And so you can see here I'm using the magenta, and then I also have a pale pink color that I got out as well. So because we left the white beads on their toothpick, we can now simply, after we cover the bead in our liquid polymer clay, we can simply dip it into the glitter well, and then you spill half of it onto your workstation. No matter, it's okay. You can see me just dipping into the spilled glitter to try and mop it up as best as I can to not waste any. There were a couple spots that didn't take, so I just used my finger, put some liquid polymer clay on my finger, dabbed it on the parts that weren't glittery, and just dipped it into the glitter well again. I made 3 beads like this. Okay guys, confession time. My video was not working when I was filming how to make the little round beads with the silk screen on it. So, major apologies, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to explain how I did it just using pictures from the project. Wish me luck, here we go. Okay guys, so you see on the silk screen the paint on our pattern. We have these rows of cherry blossom flowers, right? So there's a row of big cherry blossoms and then a row of tiny cherry blossoms and then big cherry blossoms. So about 8.5 rows on my silk screen because of the size of the white clay that I used. So what I did is I took my tissue blade and very gently cut out each row. So some of your beads may have small cherry blossoms on them, and some of them may have large cherry blossoms. If you don't want it that way, if you want each of your beads to have some small cherry blossoms and some big cherry blossoms, what you could do is use a round cutter or cut a circle into your silk screen and wrap that around your white bead. But the way I did it, I mean, that would work totally fine. The way I did it is I just used my tissue blade to cut in between each row of cherry blossom here. And so at the end I had like 9 or 10 strips, and then I just wrapped each strip of cherry blossom around the white beads that I had previously made. And that's how I did it. And then because the paint was dry, I could do this. Once I wrapped it, I kind of used my fingers to make sure that it was, the silk screen clay was squished down onto the bare bead clay. And then I just rolled it around between my palms like you would when you're making any type of round bead to make sure to get it all smooth. And then if there were any bare white spots, I went in with my tissue blade and would cut out a spare cherry blossom here or there, and then use that cherry blossom and press it into the negative space of my white bead. I hope that makes sense. So when you're done, your beads should look something like this. You can see here, on this one, I wrapped a row of big cherry blossoms and a row of small cherry blossoms onto this bead, so that's why it has both. Like I said, you could cut a circle into your silk screen and wrap that around your round beads. Then I just used my needle tool or a toothpick to poke a hole in the beads, and then I baked them. Next, I want to show you how I made the little cherry blossom pods or buds. They're supposed to look like little buds that hadn't yet opened up yet. So all I did is I took the pink color that I wanted and rolled it into a ball, and then with my fingers pinched one end so that it was more egg shaped, and so that one end was a little skinnier than the other end, so you have sort of this pod shape. And I made several of these. Here I'm just pinching it with my fingers to make that pod shape. So I ended up making 3 pods and skewering them with my needle tool or toothpick before baking. Oh, but there's one more step first. So you also need to add the little, I don't even know what you call it, but it's where the stem reaches out and kind of grabs the pod, that part of the plant. And so that's what I'm going to do next. To do that, I just rolled out on like a 3 or a 4 setting on my pasta machine a sheet of this clay, Kato, and then I used a cutter to cut out little triangles. I really wanted to use
my flower cutter, but I couldn't find it, so I settled for the triangle. If you have a flower cutter, I think that that would look best when making these pods, so please use that, or even a star would look better, but I couldn't find my little star or my little flowers, so I settled for a triangle, and it ended up working out just fine, as you can see. If you're doing a triangle, then you need 4 per pod, so if you have 3 pods, that's 12 triangles. If you're using a star or a flower cutter, then you really only need 1 per pod that you have. So here you can see I'm just taking the triangle and wrapping it around my pod, and then I give it a little roll in between my palms to make sure that it's really adhered to the pod. So you want the angle, one of the angles of the triangles sticking up towards the skinny part of the pod. Now you may be wondering why it looks like I had red triangles on there first. It's because I did. So, you know, in a cherry blossom tree, you see little bits of white, little bits of pink, and little bits of red. And so I thought it might be cool to make this part of the pod red. After I was done making the 3 pods with red holding them, I realized I didn't like them. I wanted more pink in there. I felt like the red was a poor choice. And so that's why I'm just covering the red pods with the pink pod. And then in the end, I just ended up remaking the pods from a pale pink, which you'll see in the finished product. But I make them the exact same way that you see here. You should pick whatever color. If you like the red, then I fully encourage you to go with that. Go with whatever color. I think a hunter green would even be pretty. Go with what you like. Next, it's time to skewer your pods. You can skewer them lengthwise or widthwise, whichever you prefer. I did mine lengthwise, so, you know, from starting at the skinny part down to the other skinny part. But if you want to go across width horizontally, that's totally fine too, I think.
Triangle of white and a triangle of pink next to each other, running through my pasta machine, folding down, and then running through the pasta machine several more times. I think I usually do about 20 runs through the pasta machine for my Skinner blends. And that is what we are going to use to cut out our petals. So see here, I'm using this little metal petal cutter, or maybe it's a leaf, I don't know, either way. And so I'm choosing to cut on the clay where I think it's pretty. So I'm getting some super fuchsia, some super pale pink, and then obviously I'll have some white ones with just a little bit of pink on them, because if you look at a cherry blossom in nature, that's how they are. They vary from you know, really dark or bright pink all the way to pale pink and white. So I'm going to cut out just a ton of these, and then when I don't have any more clay left to cut, I sort of squish the clay back together, run it through the pasta machine another couple of times, and cut some more. This sheet of clay that I'm cutting into, I got this thickness by using the thickest setting on my pasta machine. You really do want to use a thick setting, because when you put these flowers together, polymer clay is such a delicate medium that you don't want, especially making a bracelet that's near the hand, it's going to be jostled around a lot, and so you don't want to make it super fragile. So that's my, yeah baby, that's my advice for making sure that your flowers don't break. So next, it's time to make the sort of inside where the petals, where the piston comes out. So I rolled out this thin layer of pink kato clay on about the 3rd to thickest setting of my pasta machine. And this cutter I'm using actually came from like a snowflake cookie cutter that I have. But again, I think a star, or even if you had a tiny flower cutter, those would work great for this. I had to settle for this little, I don't know, almost like arrowhead looking cutter, which worked totally fine, as you'll see. So you need as many of these as you are going to make flowers for. Then you're going to take each flower, each petal, and squish the inside piece onto the petals, and cherry blossoms typically have 5 petals on them. So you're just going to press the petals around the center piece of the flower until you get 5. And then you're going to skewer the center, and while it's still on the toothpick, you're going to shape your petals with your fingers to your liking, as you can see me doing here. I liked to curl the tips of my petals out and down. I think that looks really pretty. And so I just ended up doing this until I was out of petals. On some of the petals, I did end up sprinkling a little bit of glitter. Not a lot and not on all of them, and I didn't capture that on video, but I think you can figure out how to sprinkle glitter onto a petal. So then it was time to bake, finally. So I followed the Kato manufacturer instructions and baked these. So I baked my pieces, and as you can see, I put eye pins through them and then just added a loop at the straight end of each eye pin, and then I spread them out onto my bead board in a cluster that I like, where I make sure that the sparkles aren't touching each other and that no 2 flowers that are similar are next to each other. And then I compared different chains that I liked with it. I decided to go with this one, and then I just started stringing them on. My advice when you start connecting your eye pins to your chain is to first string on like one set of beads that are fairly spaced out, and then go in later with maybe some of the smaller beads like the single pearls, or the smaller round beads, to fill in any gaps. I ended up making it too filled, making the cluster too filled at the beginning, and I ran out of beads for the other end of the bracelet. And so that's why I say my advice would be to spread out the beads along your bracelet first, and then go in and fill in any gaps that you see. So here's the finished product. I just need to add a toggle to the end of my bracelet to so that you can fasten it onto your wrist, and then it's done. Let me know what you all think, and if you tried this, please post your pictures in the comments below. I would love to see what you come up with. Thanks for getting bedazzled with me today. Bye!